Good afternoon. As part of these, this will be the lunchtime series, where what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do is just address some misconceptions and, in fact, confusion about certain aspects of St. Kitts, say, finance and real estate in particular. And it's puzzling for some, and rightly so, because I do not think that there's very much transparency. Let me break this down and explain, if I can, the frustration which some people feel, whether rightly or unrightly. But let me just tell you what was told to me as being the frustrating aspect of this whole thing to this young woman. She said, Carl, I went to the bank to ask them for some money to buy a house, and they told me no. So I asked her, well, did they tell you why? And she said, no, they just told me, no, I didn't qualify. And I said, well, did you think that you qualified? Do you know what qualification means or what qualification would entail? And she admitted that she didn't. Her frustration was because she had been at the bank for however many years. I've been at the bank for 7 years, so they know me. They know that I'm not going to not pay the mortgage. Well, it doesn't really work like that. And here's some things that we have to kind of familiarize ourselves with. First of all, I think that the either the bank is in the business of lending money or it's not. And if it's in the business of lending money, if that is a part of what the bank does, then I also think that the bank should be in the business of educating people. That is, telling people, look, here's what is involved if you applying for mortgage. Here's what money means. Here's what a bank loan is. Here's what interest is. None of that. Did she ask? Well, she asked, but of course, you know how it is. So you go into National, there's a guy, who is, okay, here you go here. You have everything's on the clock. I don't wear a watch, but everything's on the clock. So there's really no time to answer the questions. What would be nice is if somebody could say, look, here's what's happening. In order to qualify for a mortgage, you need to be able to show that you can make the monthly payments. And how much would be the monthly payments? How much are the monthly payments? Well, without knowing anything about mortgages, without knowing anything about banking, without knowing anything about growth service debt ratio, nothing like that. What you do know is if you get some money and you have to pay it back, and you're given a certain amount of time over which to pay it back, you should be able to say, okay, if I'm borrowing $12,000 over 12 months, then that means that I should be able to pay $1,000 back every month. At the very least, that should be what you're able to do. Of course, it's not as simple as that because the bank also charges a fee for the privilege of you having the money, having the $12,000. And on top of that, this of course would be interest, if you will. On top of that, there are all of the other expenses that go along with a loan, which need to be broken down. But here's the bottom line. If your job, and with your job, and with your paycheck, and with your pay stubs, and with your weekly budget, and your monthly budget, you know that you cannot afford the $1,000 a month in order to pay back the loan, and you can only afford $800, there is no way that the bank is going to give you the loan because the bank, whoever the bank official is, whoever the bank lender is, has a responsibility to the bank to make sure that there is an ability to pay. So first we're going to talk about the ability to pay. And this is before any three C's of credit, before anything of that. You need some money. We're going to the bank. They're going to lend you some money, hopefully. Are you able to pay it back? Are you in a stable position to pay it back? If you can only pay back, if monthly payment, everything taken off when the dust settles down, if you can only afford $800 a month, and there's no shame to the game. It's what you can afford. You either have to change the amount that you need, you have to lower your expectations, or you have to step up and get more money from your job, or you have to have somebody who's going to bridge the gap. And in this case, in St. Kitts, a lot of times you may call it the month the month end ride. Somebody's going to come and give you $200 to help you bridge the gap between what you owe the bank and what you're due to the bank and what you're able to pay. So that's kind of how things go. If you're looking at your friends and say, but wait, how can she afford this place on the money that she makes and I can't? Well, there are the little things that come into play as well. And part of it is the culture where if you are looking for a house, you can get one from the government. The government can give you a house. And in other words, then you are the recipient, you are the beneficiary of the what would seem to be the government being a good steward, governing the people correctly. What it really is the government rewarding people either for voting for them in the past, for making a big noise and singing their praises high, or it could even be the votes that would be coming to you in the future, except especially if you're around, if you're young, if you're 21, 22, if the time between voting and the last elections is less than 4 years and you just got your ability to vote, then strangely enough, sometimes even without a job, you can sometimes miraculously end up with land. Land that, of course, you will subsequently build on, or in the cases that are happening now, the government could give you a land in a subdivision and give you a payment plan for what you pay. Now, another lady who was expressing frustration because she was on the waiting list for the land and wanted to hurry things along. She had two kids, and she didn't have, there was no father figure, there's no baby daddy in the picture who was supporting and helping with the expenses. But somebody told her, look, if you really want some land, I can tell you who up there you can ride for the land. It's the Ride for Land program. In other words, I'm laughing, but I should be tearing up just for even articulating this. But it is what it is. You know that this is the case. They know that it's a case. The rider up there knows that it's a case. So what happens is you go, you ride. I don't know if it's a one-time ride or if it's a monthly ride or if it's a rider. But if you are the ridee, then you have to come to some understanding of what is involved. But within a certain of time, period of time, hopefully, you will get your land, whether or not the rides continue or things, but there's no free ride. There's something called a rubric, and I hate using these terms, but basically, let's understand it kind of outside of the academic or the scholastic set, uh, kind of confines or just that space. Let us understand it as something where we can hold it up ourselves and test ourselves. So, in other words, even if somebody wasn't coming to you and tell you, okay, Carl, you got 80% on this test, or 40% on this test, or 95% on this test. You should be able to, using the rubric, using the scale by which the assessment is done, you should be able to mark yourself and get the same mark as if the teacher was doing it. And sure, you may be for each one have a couple of points where they could give subjective marks for creativity, for whatever, for writing, you know. But you should be able to tell yourself, okay, that was a fair assessment because here are the things that are used, here are the criteria that are used in order to determine the assessment or success of the assessment. And I was failing or deficient in this one criterion, and that is why I fell short. I didn't do it, but you go away knowing what has to be addressed in order to do it, in order to get through, in order to be successful, in order to triumph the next time around. And that's all that we're going to try and do. We're going to try, and I have the misfortune of not being able to communicate some things very well. And it's partly because I try not to dummy down the language that I use. So I sometimes have to stop and try to see if I could find a word that is more simple, more easily accessible. Uh, so we don't talk about quid pro quo, or we don't talk about what we talk about is ride for lab. You want something, this is what you go for. So we're going to try to break it down in as simple a form as possible, and also try to break down the concepts as well. So rather than talk about derivatives or change or future value of money or, I'm going to try and make it as simple as I can, knowing the experiences, having the conversations, etc., that I've had many, many, many times in the past and will continue having them many, many times in the future. And hopefully this will help. So, let's quickly review. The government can give you land. You can inherit land. You can ride for land, which is basically the same thing. Or four, you can do what's necessary to go and get someone to lend you the money through the proper means and agree on a repayment term for the land. And those are the ways of getting real estate in St. Kitts and anywhere else. If you can think of some other ways, or if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. I'm going to walk you through the whole process in the next section of what it would take to, say, purchase a regular house, a two-bedroom house that is in good condition. It is valued at $328,000 EC. I'm going to go over with you the steps that you would take in order to purchase a house like that. So just what you would need, what you take, what you need to the bank. One thing I would tell you, do not pay for an appraisal before you get an okay from the bank. I'll explain that as well to you. So the first thing is this session is the means of acquiring land, of acquiring real estate. Next session, I'm going to show you what to do, how to go about getting it. Does that sound fair? Stay with us if you can. Stay with us before we are banned. My name is Carl Maurice, and Carl Maurice Walwyn from Walwyn Real Estate Services. We'll get you through this, even though the road may be rocky ahead. We'll walk you through it step by step, and we want to go faster or further than you're able. If as soon as you don't understand something, just say stop, and we'll go back to it either in the session or in the next session. Okay? Fair enough. Enjoy your lunch.